Hello, this is our Rats with Team 4545 League, analyzing the game between DS Chesq and Fireball. This was played in Team Event 53 in round 6. Let's have a look. And I about died when I saw that move. Well, it's not a bad move. It's not a great move. It's certainly gets White out of his book real quick. How do you handle a move like that? Well, you just develop your pieces. So White can probably pretty much do anything here. Before we show White's move, let's talk about it for a second. What did 8-6 do? Well, as it turns out, the idea was for Black to play G5, and he's playing what they call the spike or Sokolow's opening, or Sokolov, I don't remember, reversed. So it's certainly something to bamboozle your opponent with. But how do we handle a move like that? Well, we don't know yet. His intention is G5 until he shows it. But what we do is we look to transpose probably into some kind of a opening that tempo will do Black no good. So the first logical move that comes to mind for me to play is just E4. Now, of course, Black can continue with G5 as he did in the game, but let's just talk about this for a second. If Black goes into a Sicilian defense, just for instance, he's down a tempo, and that's his tempo. And how often is H6 played in the Sicilian defense? Usually, it's only played after White has played Bishop G5. So White's got to have a decent position if we go into a Sicilian defense. Now, nothing's making Black go into it, of course, but what else can Black do? He can't go really into a double king pawn opening because he's just going to run into some problems here. Yeah, he can get the pawn back, but White's getting all kinds of development, okay? And the queen is a target on E4. White's ready to castle, play knight C3, and chase the queen out. So E4 is not a bad move. What else is Black going to try? He's going to try to maybe Caro-Kann type position. Well, that's fine. We can go right into the advanced variation, I guess, or something like this. I don't know. But there's probably a lot of other ideas White can do. But let's just assume for a moment that Black's going to do what he did. Well, fine. Okay. What are we going to do now? Well, let's go put the bishop on C4. Why not, right? Now, what's Black going to do? That's the question. Now it comes back to him. So if he tries G5, it's kind of risky, or G4, because White has knight E5, right? And now there's a threat of mate and 1 on the board, and the pawn on G4 is hanging. So how's Black going to deal with this? Well, he's got to cover F7. So the only two moves that seem to do it are E6 and D5, right? And I don't think D5 is all that good, so that leaves E6. And White could probably almost sacrifice on that square, but after queen takes, I don't think Black has a lot going for him here. I think White is fine. So really what this does is it refutes Bishop C4 refutes G4, and Black's going to have to come up with something new here. And I don't know, G6, D6, but still, that keeps the knight out of E5. White's got a decent game here. He's got development, and Black hasn't really demonstrated anything out of the ordinary. Now, really, what's Black going to do here? I think just 2 E4, trying to make an open game out of it, simply knocks H6 on its, rolls it over and knocks it on its back. It's really a bad move. But you have to know how to handle a move like that. Now here we have about 150 rating point advantage, and I don't know what White plays. Maybe he's uncomfortable in open positions. I don't know. That could have an effect on what we're going to do. But really, White's kind of for choice here. It's kind of like a perk defense. now where these pawns have just both advanced a little bit, maybe too far. So black to play, knight f6, and then just kind of like play a perk defense style. This is just a little possible line, but white's ready. White's ready to get going here. Look, all his minor pieces are out. He's castled. He's ready to start the assault on the king. And white doesn't even have to castle kingside here. He could play bishop. Well, let's go queen e2 first. Queen e2, and then if castles, now bishop e3, and we don't care if black takes time and goes knight to g4, because we'll just let him. We'll just castle, and if he wants, like I say, if he wants to do it, we'll just castle. Now look at that development white has. Now whoopee, black's got the bishop pair, but white's opening up lines, and that black king may not be long for this game. Black needs some defenders over there quick. H4, and then just pile it on, go after the pawn, and the black position is like Swiss cheese over there. White's just getting all kinds of pressure. But anyway, this is just a fantasy line. I would love to play white here. I'm sure he can find all kinds of good moves to break this game open. Ideas of e5 coming in, even if it sacrifices another pawn, it opens up e4 for the knight, so the knight can get into play. And this knight on h2 is not all that badly placed. It's going to end up on g3 shortly, where it's hitting h5 and ready to hop into f5 if need be. This bishop on c4, it's putting a lot of pressure on this diagonal. If it needs to come over to this diagonal, it can still do it. That looks good. So e4, I think, is a good response to h6. Okay, so c4. Okay, let's think about it. Why would white choose this move? Okay, maybe he's comfortable playing an English opening. I'm not saying it's a bad move. It certainly isn't. Anything white plays is good here after h6. But one drawback it does is it doesn't lead to open type positions where e4 does. That's why I would say e4 is a much better move. For the same context, even d4. D4 is probably okay. What's black going to do? It's probably best he go into some kind of Queen's Gambit decline, maybe a Slav defense or something, but white's still going to have that extra tempo, and he won't be getting bishop g5 in, but he can go in for lines where the bishop goes to f4 and try one of those and transpose there. And so also the c4 move only frees the queen, and where e4 frees both the queen and the bishop. So anyway, it's what black played, and now, or white played. Now black shows his intention, and I think h3 is just overreactionary. What are you afraid of? It just weakens the king side because white wants to castle there, and let him extend his pawns. Okay, just develop. Okay, just always. In light of anything else, the developing move is always good, right? What's black going to do? He's going to kick it. So what? Let him kick it. Now we're on it, right? Now is black going to waste more time moving pawns while white continues his development? Okay, maybe he's going to kick the knight. Well, big deal. The knight's finding good squares. F4 is a great square for this knight now in this position. Black can't play e5, right? So what's black going to do? He's going to maybe play knight f6. Okay, fine. We'll just play knight c3. Now we're ready to play e4. Okay, so maybe black's going to try to play e5 himself. Well, fine. Let him. e4. Just let him. Okay. We can take if we want here, and then we have white's got just reasonable development all across the board, and now queen d2 stops castling because this will drop, so black's going to have to regroup, and now we can. Now let's just go sink a knight on d5 for the fun of it. What else? I mean, this is just fantasy lines. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to sink it in, and we're trading off too many pieces here. But whoops, this falls, so got to take this way. And I don't know. White's still for choice here. He's got all the development he wants, and black hasn't shown anything other than the fact that he's shoved a lot of pawns up the board. Okay, so let's go back. H3 is just plain wrong, and how White spent 6 minutes on it, and really, when somebody makes, H6 wasn't a developing move, and now White's returned the favor with H3. Let me just go back and see how much time did White spend on his second move. He spent barely over a minute and a half. Okay, so anyway, not enough time, but 6 minutes and then coming up with that move. Just like I say, anytime somebody plays something offbeat in the opening, a developing move is rarely going to be wrong. I can't stress that enough. Develop, develop, develop. If you watch these league games, you see so many people get into trouble because they don't develop their pieces, and H3 doesn't develop. Okay, so it keeps black back in the game. So black just continues with his plan, and White starts his development going. And D3 is just kind of passive. It's almost saying to black, it's okay what you've done. I don't care. I'm not going to play very aggressive. And in reality, black's equalized now because both sides have spent a tempo with their rook pawn moves, and I'm pretty sure black's got at least an even game right now. White just hasn't done anything to try to justify the tempo advantage and the possible space he could have acquired. Okay, so bishop f5, and bishop e3. This just seems kind of timid, but of course, where else is it going to go? Unless you want to try to prepare an assault with h4 somewhere down the line, or get ready to castle queenside. But e5. Now we're kind of almost in English, and black has done fine. I mean, just look at the board. Black is just fine. He's pretty much caught up in development. Both his knights are ready to come out. The white king bishop hasn't developed. That's one thing I don't like about the bishop on e3. It stopped e3, so the bishop can't develop. Okay, so now White's given back another tempo. He's decided, well, d3 wasn't good enough. I want to get d4 in. So I guess that's what White's plan was when he took time to play bishop e3. He just, in effect, gave up a move to get d4, and it wasn't even needed. He could have played d4 on that given move. Let's just go back. See, White had d4 right there. Instead, he plays d3, followed by bishop e3, followed by d4. Doesn't make any sense. So he's just giving black a lot of free rein here. Anyway, he's taking his time at least, so he's doing the best he can. But when you can play solid moves instead of developing moves, it just makes the rest of your moves so much easier to find. You don't have to spend a lot of clock time and run short of it, because your game just becomes easier to play. When you give yourself a bad game willingly, you're making yourself spend more time, which eventually can come back and bite you because of the time problem. Okay, so g3, and c5 might be a little early to try to open up the position because neither side is castled yet, but I can't. But black still has an equal game. That just face it. And this seems kind of odd. Black's giving up giving voluntarily white a target d6. It's a backward pawn on the open file, but there's a method to the madness because white's not developed to take advantage of it or try to get anywhere with it. Now white had to cover the double pawns. I guess he didn't like taking on e5 and maybe giving black the option to get rid of that weakness. So queen b6, And I'm still a little nervous about both sides here because neither sides have castled, and they're both black's being a little more aggressive than white. Look at black's pieces. He's attacking this pawn. I guess he could have taken it last move. Maybe it's risky. Let's see. Oops. Now what? Oh no, yeah, it is risky. Queen A4 check. Okay. Okay, so now knight D5, and now this kind of punishes queen B6. I thought that was a little risky, coming out a little too early. You can't take on B2 because there's a knight C7 check, so black has to come back. So now black has just turned around and said to white, yeah, I equalized. Now I'm going to do everything I can to help you get a little advantage. So now what black needs to do, or white needs to do, is get castled, get that development completed, priority, and keep a knight anchored in on D5. It's a great blockader of the backward pawn on the open file, and then try and figure out what you're going to do next. But you got to get the development completed first before you can figure out a good sound plan. And good, white develops his king, and black develops his knight. And was the exchange needed? Generally, I mean, I'm of the opinion you shouldn't make exchanges if you're playing for a win, because you need your pieces, unless you can get something a little strategic for it. First, it gives black the option of getting rid of his weakness on D6. The other choice black has is it activates his bishop on G7. So why do you want to make exchanges that activate your piece's development? This goes back to what I've talked about in a number of videos, what Nimzovich said. If you're going to make exchanges that improve the position of your pieces. So maybe white saw a threat here that he thought was a threat. Here, I'll just show it to you. What black could have done was played knight takes F3. Now white's in a dilemma. If he takes with the bishop, he's going to drop his pawn on H3, right? And if he takes with the pawn, he's got double pawns and shut in his bishop. But really, that's not all so bad. White will be able to play F4 here and get rid of his double pawn. Plus, it's giving white an extra file to play on, the E file, and white's ready to try to exploit that, and black isn't. So it almost seems like what white's trying to do is avoid this possibility, but really it's fine for white. So this guy or girl or whatever needs to be developed. Just queen D2. Oh wait, we gotta watch this thing. It gets a little tricky here. It's covered in some lines, but as soon as that black king gets castled, it's no longer there. We have to be careful about B3 because of the tricks on A1, so maybe what white has to do is stop and play rook C1 here at some point. Yeah, at this point, rook C1, just to get so that maybe you can play B3 and free the rook later. And then we can develop the queen to D2 and then figure out what we're going to do. Okay, so let's see. What white does is he takes here, and like I say, that just improves the position of that black bishop. And now it's pressuring on B2, and G3 isn't as secure as it once was because that pawn is on H3, not on H2. Okay, so now white trades another piece. Well, that was just such a wonderful knight. Do we have to trade it? I don't think so. Let's see. I guess what white's afraid of is that if it's black's move, that he's going to take, and we want to take with the queen to keep that pawn backward, but then B2 hangs. That's what I'm seeing. Unless you're going for some tactics on B7, but those will be covered. I don't know, let's spend a move for white, like I like to say. Let's put the rook on C1. Well, maybe we're afraid of B2. Let's just put I don't know. If you put the queen on D2, if black takes on D5, well, you take with the bishop. Yeah, just queen D2 here. What's wrong with that? Like I say, get the queen developed. If he takes, you just take back with the bishop, and the bishop's doing a fine job there. White's bishops are okay. Oops, this is loose again. But, maybe we can even gambit that pawn. I don't know. But I can't spend all time on it. like I say, just as a general rule, I don't like to keep trading pieces. I used to do it myself, but I found that it's better to keep pieces on the board because you can do more things. Okay, so queen b3, and overprotecting the pawn. Well, it's under attack, but really, black's okay. He can just give the pawn up, I think. Let's see. So what's white going to do? Take? Okay, fine. You know, we're gonna do some dirty deeds ourselves here. The rook is going to come down to the 7th rank when it's all said and done. So let's park the bishop on d5. That's as good a square as any. And you know, black's rook looks great. White can't go to the open file b1 because the bishop on f5, right? So black didn't need to fear this position at all. Black's doing great. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so rook b8. This guy's king still isn't castled. Here we are at move 15. It's a long time. And white decides he's going to cover h3, although black wasn't attacking it yet. What else can white do? None of his pieces are working together. That's the problem. I guess king h2, maybe the idea is to get the bishop to d5. So we won't criticize it. But now, this is a good move because now if h5, it's nothing protecting it, right? The defensive power of a pinned piece is purely imagination. Okay, whoops, and black's just banked a pawn and will go about his business. And now we'll seek to pry open the H file, right? So seems to, you know, it maybe it looks risky to play this move, but it almost has to be played. If not, well, there's another alternative we'll get to in a moment. But why was white so fearful of this? I'm just wondering. Well, black does have the direct h5 trick, and he's on e2, so maybe there is a reason after all. Again, white's pieces are just not working together here. This bishop has no targets, and it has no forward squares to move to that are useful. And the rooks don't have any open lines that could maybe do anything. Maybe, you know, the only plan I can think of is try and put a rook. You know, well, let's just do this. Let's just chase that bishop out of there, okay? And I'll show you why I'm doing this. Now, what white's going to do is he's going to, well, this pawn, it looks awful shaky. Yeah, white can't do f3. But the other idea is to play rook e1 and followed by rook f1 and king g1. That's just an idea, and the king is reasonably protected, and now white's got some pressure on h6. But of course, black will have advanced that pawn up the board by then. But when you're stuck with such a plan as this, then you know something's gone wrong. And what went wrong was stopping to play 3h3 and then taking 2 moves to play d4. White could have had such an open game out of this with all kinds of freedom to move, but he didn't elect to do so. So okay, so let's move on. Rook d1. Now we can let the pawn sit. Taking it might be a little risky. Let's see. You know, who wants to bring their king out when you don't have to? But like I say, you run for the hills. Yeah. Wow. This can get crazy in a hurry. f5. And here's black attacking without any development. You know, I can understand why one might not want to go into this line, especially when you don't have much time on your clock. But I don't know. That just doesn't seem right. I mean, it's obvious that if black takes, that he's going to drop his rook, but black's not going to do that. You can't count on that. If you're going to move the bishop, just, you know, all this does is stop black from castling, but he's not going to castle. He's got his rook where he wants it. If it's not going to be on the H file, it's going to be on the G file. Okay, so let me just back up. If you're going to move this thing, just put it there. And we can worry about collecting the H-pawn much later. It's not going anywhere. And but then again, Black's got some attacking chances here. That pawn's coming in, and White's going to have to deal with it. But anyway, Black's got a great game. Let's get in the main line. So check. And here's White begins to fall apart. And it's mainly because he's running low on time. This move, it's not bad, but it's just starting to create more weaknesses in the White position. Now E3 is not secure, and I never liked that bishop sitting on E3 anyway. But although the bishop could come back to F2 maybe if need be, or even G1, I don't know. At least it gives the bishop some scope. It didn't have any, but now it's turning into a defensive piece, and it's taking away a lot of the activity of that black bishop on E5. But who allowed that bishop to go to E5? White did. He chose to make an exchange and put it there. So this didn't have to happen. White allowed this position to occur. And I think it's this point that White just goes, not yet. He just starts dropping stuff. And this looks reasonable, although I like the D5 square. Still, it's good to see the bishop near the king where it's trying to help out. And if Black pushes H5, H4, you're going to go by with G4 and try and hang on, and then consider these pawns' weaknesses later. And there it comes. But here, White just goes bonkers and drops a piece. What else can White do? Well, I guess the plan is to push by with G4. So gives us two candidate moves. We can play Rook H1 or Rook G1. And I'll tell you the reason for both. The reason of Rook G1 is that if on H4 we push by with G4 and we're going to try to do something on the open G file or half open G file, because this pawn is going to be marching up the board, maybe the other pawn too. Now, Black doesn't have to allow this, but this is just the plan. And the other idea is put the rook on H1, and the idea behind this is that after here and here, we figure we got enough critters covering that. We're going to bring the king back and run him to the queen side if we need to, and then we're ready to take this pawn off at our leisure. So either one's a playable idea, but what happens is White just drops a piece. And how much time did he spend on it? He spent 38 seconds, and now essentially the game's over. White's down a piece, and he has no counterplay. So I'll just kind of run through the moves. It's kind of a shame. But Black was for choice. Black had the better position there. But White still had some ideas to mix things up and keep the game a game, which I demonstrated. And I'm just going to play through the final moves. There's quite a few of them, actually. And White just starts collecting what he can. But really, Black has no problem, and I don't understand that. But let's see. White really doesn't have enough firepower to go after the king. There's just, now you're down a rook, and a little bit of nuisance value, but Black just handles all that. Like I say, you're down a whole rook and don't quite have enough. Now he's given up an exchange, so you have a bishop against two rooks, and you've got a bunch of pawns for it, but those pawns aren't moving. It's they're too far back. They're never going to create a threat. So, although, like I say, White gets some activity, and he played for some activity, why didn't he try for activity right out of the opening? I showed an active plan. It's good that White's not afraid to make some sacrifices to get an open game, but if he played 2e4, he may very well have had an open game. So, anyway, it's just one game, and we don't play perfectly every game. But like I say, if we can take care of our mistakes in one game, we won't make them the next, and we'll theoretically get better as we improve. And like I say, White's got a little little bit going here for his activity. He's finally got his pawns advanced, and he looks solid. But black just has too much wood. You know, down 2 exchanges, or down an exchange and a rook. Those pawns just aren't enough. Black will just find some ways to open up some lines here eventually, and then it's curtains. And he just offers exchanges. Now, white shouldn't have taken that pawn, because that just gives black what he wants, open lines. Although white's in trouble here, if anything, he's going to try and blockade this position and make black figure out how to break through. Okay, so how would you go about blockading this? Well, there's always going to be some wrinkle and chink in the armor somewhere. Black will eventually b3 is the logical move. Black will eventually pry a line open. He'll get b5 in and make some exchange, and something is going to get opened up, and those rooks are going to get in the game. But it's going to take black a little bit of while. White's got some nuisance value. His sacrifice did have some merit, but just taking on h3, it gives black exactly what he wants, the open line. Black says, gee, thanks, I've got an open file now, thank you. Instead, black has to go about and pry one open, and he will. But maybe what if white doesn't find it, or black doesn't find that plan? Maybe white can sit here and offer a draw, and black in time trouble. Oh my God, those pawns are getting dangerous. You know, these pawns could get dangerous in a hurry if black fumbles around too much. Maybe white could offer a draw, and black could happily take it just to avoid losing. So anyway, king takes is just wrong. The pawn wasn't going anywhere, and now look, we open lines. It's just a shame that your game just falls apart so quick, just over one pawn. And like I say, black's got all the open lines now. Now things fall, and he doesn't have enough pawns now. Then one is gone, and it's just a matter of time. And there's the time. White decided that was enough. So the game wasn't perfect from both sides, but that's all right. That's going to happen at this level. Either side could have won the game. Either side could have lost the game, and that's what I maintain. You're always in a game. We're not grandmasters. We're always going to have winning chances in any game we play. It's just a matter of seeing when mistakes are made and recognizing them and taking the best advantage we can. And in this case, Fireball's enterprising h6 on the first move. It's not a bad move, but it just doesn't help his case. White can get a lot if he opens up the game, and White didn't. White slow played it and got himself in a bad way. But anyway, extremely interesting game. There's a lot to it. There's always something to look at in a game of chess. I hope I've helped the participants when they go back and look at this video. And I look forward to making you all another video real soon. Take care.